For the last Sunday of the year 2014, you've found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda for this new year, streetcars will roll on Tuesday in downtown Atlanta. For the first time in 13 years, all Georgia Guard troops are home from war zones. And Sally Yates, the U.S. Attorney, is nominated for a number 2 job in Washington. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you'd be with us on this last Sunday of the year. Hope you had a great Christmas and Hanukkah, and we'll look ahead to a happy New Year in the coming week. Kasim Reed went out on a limb, I guess. Maybe he didn't, but he said a week or so ago that that streetcar, that President Obama boondoggle, will be running by New Year's Eve. And apparently it's going to be. It's supposed to start running Tuesday. And I must say, I think it's going to be kind of fun because I plan to go to the Peach Bowl on Wednesday. And I have decided, because of the streetcar, that I'll take the MARTA train to Peachtree Center Station, catch the streetcar to take me to the Dome. What do you think?
I think that sounds great. Certainly you want to use public transit, whatever you decide to do, or get a cab or limo.
Or Uber.
Right, or Uber.
Not even Uber. They'll be stuck in traffic too.
Right.
Well, it is a boondoggle. I want to just talk about it a little bit. Kasim Reed made the comment that since 45% of it is paid by the feds, why wouldn't you do it? Well, that's not the question, Phil.
Well,
why should anything be paid for by 45% from the feds?
We have seen
still the
this,
taxpayer.
We have seen this over the decades. Once you get addicted to federal money, all sorts of unforeseen consequences can happen with your budget.
And so where in America are we not addicted to federal money?
Well, I think
whether it's for roads or boondoggles or bridges or whatever.
Well,
everywhere you look, we're addicted to
Well,
federal money, right?
But beyond that,
But the unfunded mandates are
if
what
we
kill
don't
you.
use that money, then some other states will use it. So we pay into it, so we might as well take advantage
We
of
want
the
our money
opportunity
back.
to
At
use it.
some point, we have to stop. That's all I got
And
to
well, we're
say
stopping
about
at the wrong point, because we should have taken that money for expanding Medicare, Medicaid.
Have you heard about our
That would have really
$17
given
trillion
me-
debt? I don't want you to forget about that.
Well, have you seen that it's coming down very much?
Anyway, the streetcar will be a tourist amenity in downtown Atlanta.
That's
I don't-
what it's designed
I
to
don't
be.
think it is going to be a major transportation improvement because it duplicates existing bus and rail lines. But it will be a tourist thing, running from the Dome out to the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gravesite. I guess that has its place. The ridership estimates, I think, are probably a little high. We'll see, and I'll report back to you next week on how we do. Now, your tax dollars at work again. This past week, a slow week because of the Christmas holidays and the Hanukkah conclusion. Ebola mishandled, apparently, at the Centers for Disease Control in DeKalb County, and they can't seem to get it right over there. It's a little worrisome. This is what, the third time that something...
Well, in the past year, we've had these problems.
We had it with anthrax.
Well, I'm just going to say we've had problems at the CDC with mishandling in these labs, and we saw that announcement just before Christmas. I don't understand why this continues to happen. They have said that they've got it under control. They supposedly did new procedures, and now this.
Well, it is unfortunate that it happened, but I don't know that we're hearing about it because of the Ebola scare that we had earlier this year, but it seems like they ought to do a better job than what
Well,
they're
fortunately, the lab technician involved was showing no symptoms as of Christmas Day.
Yeah.
He'll go through the 21-day quarantine, and we'll hope the CDC can figure this out. A lot of news gets lost in and around holidays, but I think we should note that the vaunted task force in DeKalb County, appointed by Lee May, the interim chief executive, met for about 6 months, it seems to me, and punted. The task force said, we're not going to really look at the form of government which is unique to DeKalb County. Instead, we're going to appoint a charter commission to take 6 more months and look at it. And Jeff, it's pretty clear that DeKalb Democratic elected officials don't want to change in the form of government because they all want that job because it pays well.
Well, I don't know if that's why they won't. We really need to look at the history of it. It goes back to our old friend Manuel Malouf, And that's where that form of government started. And when you had that kind of strength of personality in an individual, you could have that form of government. Ever since he left that job, there have been problems with it.
Under Leanna Levitan.
That's exactly
under
right.
Vernon Jones, it's been nothing but lawsuits and
Well,
trouble.
This is one area where I think Alexis and I have always agreed we need a new form of government. It's very sad that these elected officials, if what you're saying is true, and I have a hunch that you're right, there's no vision. There's no vision for reform. The CEO system is not working in
Now, the
DeKalb
task
County.
Well, I mean, wait a minute. We got a strong executive and examples of a strong executive elsewhere. Excuse the way I sound. I think
the
I may have got
the lines aren't drawn.
I think I might have gotten that Ebola that they messed up over there at CDC.
Careful, does it?
But you've got you got a strong mayor in Atlanta. You got a strong executive elsewhere. You've got clear
Jeff, are you
lines
saying it's
between
working
an
in
executive
DeKalb? Are you saying
and
it's
a
working?
legislative. I think that it needs some fixes. I don't think that there's any question about
The
it.
lines aren't clear who
Yeah.
has, for example, budget authority.
That's
and that's
exactly
right.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem.
And that's the thing I think that has
And there's
led
no
to the
vision
problems
for
with,
reform. That's
Burl
the sad
Ellis.
part.
Burl Ellis got problems because he was in charge of managing the
Contracts.
contractors who were also, he solicited for contributions.
One recommendation of the task force in DeKalb County was creating a position of an internal auditor. And the commissioners don't like that for some reason, but we'll see where that falls. In the meantime, the county continues to shift and divide, and new maps were released in the last 10 days on the new cities of Tucker and La Vista Hills in sort of north-central DeKalb. But it looks to me like they haven't really resolved who controls the commercial areas around North Lake Mall.
Well, I thought it was a good compromise when they picked La Vista Road, and you had Northside Mall on one side, and then you had the other shopping center areas on the other side. They kind of split the tax base.
But is that resolved?
Well, that was the compromise as this is being taped, so I hope it's resolved.
Okay. What's going on with Grady and Blue Cross Blue Shield? That's a little troublesome. Thousands of Blue Cross Blue Shield people go to Grady Hospital, the emergency room. And Grady's claiming Blue Cross has locked them out. Blue Cross says Grady wants a whole lot more money than they're willing to pass on to their customers. Is this something that we're going to see more of? Can this be resolved quickly?
It needs to be resolved immediately because Grady's just too important to the healthcare people in this region. Our only level 1 hospital here, and
Well, there is another level 1 hospital.
well, I mean,
in
it's
Atlanta.
the main level 1
Primary one.
hospital, and the place you're most likely to end up if you're in a car crash or a fire or God knows what else. And a lot of those are Blue Cross patients. Not only that, they're trying to change their mix over there, their patient mix, and not be quite as indigent. Heavy. They need some paying patients, and Blue
Jeff,
Cross
the
Blue
problem-
Shield patients are paying patients.
The problem, the root cause, we've argued about this, is the insurance companies and the costs that have been passed on to the insurance companies by Obamacare, by this big government socialistic apparatus.
No,
this is that's the root problem.
it's
How
the-
do you fix it? You
You
love
gotta be
Obamacare.
kidding.
How do you
No,
fix
it's
it?
not.
capitalistic exploitation nature of
Thank
the
you.
insurance
Exactly right. It's a
industry.
for-profit company trying to rip off this hospital that we need in metropolitan Atlanta. I don't know what you're talking about.
So you've
Obamacare.
always hated the insurance companies. Is
I
this
don't
part
hate
of
the
that
insurance
again?
companies, but let me tell you what, one of the things that Obamacare is doing and successfully, even in the state of Georgia, which has been backward as all get out when it comes to Obamacare, even here, we have more competition than we would have otherwise. Do you doubt
I tell
that?
you what.
Do you
the
doubt that we
cost-
have more? Do you doubt that we have fewer
The
insurers?
sure do.
costs are soaring, and I do doubt that.
We have more competition.
I'm
We have
not
more
hearing
competition.
that. I'm not hearing that.
And the primary reason that the costs have increased is the fact that now you have insurance that actually takes care of you. Before you were buying junk
Well,
insurance.
I see less
with
choice and higher premiums, and that's
deductibles.
part of this whole fight.
Fewer plans. All right. When we come back, a pretty remarkable story about the last 13 years. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
In the days before Christmas, we got to watch as a Georgia Guard Engineering Construction Unit returned to the state from, I believe, Afghanistan. And that group of soldiers in Toccoa, where there's some beautiful reunion scenes and so forth. And it is said, and Phil, you I'm a little worried about you here, but it is said that this will be the first time, right now, the first time in 13 years that a Georgia unit has not been deployed in war zones.
Yes and no. Technically, you're correct, but I would argue that yes, we do have some Georgia Guard units on a very dangerous border along Texas, dealing with narco criminals and illegal immigrants and arms and human trafficking. So thank you to those
But
Georgia
I'm not
troops
sure
that are on the border.
Well,
Wow.
that's good, but I'm not sure that qualifies as a war zone.
Exactly.
I don't. Some of the ranchers, especially the family of the
Yes.
killed rancher, might disagree with you.
Yes, all right. Now, this week, again, just kind of out of the blue, we learned that the Metro Atlanta unemployment rate declined to 6.5%. I'm guessing the state unemployment rate is still, that is now
Right at 7
currently,
too.
but it's probably about 7. But that is good news for Metro Atlanta as that moves along. Also, the feds said that in the second quarter of this year, national economic growth was 5%. I simply don't believe that.
Yeah, I know. You
just-
all are going to have to find something else to beat up Obama
That's
about.
right.
I'm telling you.
Everything is
No,
just
I mean,
that's
this
the
second
Fed.
term,
Well, that's
it's
the
just
Fed.
coming
That's the
around,
Fed.
you know?
And they
the
said there was
Fed.
4.6% growth in the first quarter. But as we know, because we talk about it, you look at the various local economic forecasters from the University of Georgia, from Georgia State University, they're not talking 5%.
Well,
they're very
Georgia
pessimistic.
has lagged behind, and one of the reasons I still contend, going back to our earlier discussion, is about not expanding Medicaid. That would have added a tremendous number of jobs and increase in the economy. had
And
we
$30
taken-
billion.
And
Again,
600,000
we can't
people would have
afford
been
it.
eligible for it.
Billions
You
over
can't
10
afford
years.
it. You can't afford it. I keep hearing you can't afford to spend $3 billion over
You know,
10 years in order to get $30
Right.
billion in
It would-
federal
it would
aid.
bust the budget.
What sense does that
Moving
make?
along on the
None.
economic front, two newspapers are saying that Coca-Cola is planning to lay off 2,000 workers. Now they've got a huge workforce, but that should have some impact at North Avenue, I would think.
And this is part of why you are pessimistic, and I am too, about the economy. You continue to see companies shedding jobs, and more Americans than ever have part-time work. That is not good. That is not a sign of a
One
healthy
other
But
economy.
we still have the 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. And that's why there are many jobs that need to be filled. And that's what some of these numbers are, too.
But they're being replaced by part-timers, I think, is what Phil's
That
point
was
is.
my
then
point.
that goes back to the tremendous evolution in how business gets
Well,
done
the
and how
business-
work gets
business
done
does
in
not wanna
America.
do, healthcare
And
plans.
what
I
they
gotta
wanna
move
do,
along.
and what they also want to do is make everything a robot or computerized, and they don't need human beings for that.
I also think that this news from Coca-Cola is worth discussing. The company has abandoned voicemail.
Yeah.
Now, Coca-Cola is known for best practices. They've always been a company everybody follows. They've abandoned voicemail.
They said 90% of their employees don't use it anymore. That surprised me.
Because
That's
everybody
because of
texts-
cell phones and
texts.
texting and
Right.
emails and Blackberries. I just think that's remarkable because your business, my business, we had to install those voicemail systems.
Right.
And you know what? I don't use it either.
You know?
No.
Well, it can be used quite effectively because you can find out what they're calling for in the
You know, we
first place.
always have to take our cue from young people. And
know.
I can't leave a message for my daughter.
They don't use.
I
the
have to
phone
text
anyway.
her.
Right.
Well, that's true. It's the only way we can do it.
That's
All right,
right.
Sally Yates is one of the most interesting people in the state of Georgia. She is truly the definition of the old-fashioned courageous prosecutor. Sally Yates is on the staff of the U.S. Attorney and as U.S. Attorney for North Georgia, successfully prosecuted Bill Campbell, the former mayor of Atlanta, Eric Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber, Linda Shrenko, the Republican superintendent of schools, and Mitch Scandalakis, the
It's quite
former
a
Republican
bipartisan
chairman
list.
of
Quite a
Fulton
record.
County. Sally Yates has a lot of scalps in her professional career, and the president is going to nominate her to be Deputy Attorney General of the United States. And it seems to me there's a political backstory there. First of all, Johnny Isakson, Saxon Chambliss, everybody, even though Chambliss is leaving, they're all for her because she's got an unblemished record. But she's apolitical. She's never shown any signs of being overtly political in that job.
Well,
And Obama has got to get Loretta Lynch in office as Attorney General. So as a package, I wonder if that isn't some pretty smart thinking. You get one that the Republicans might be a little queasy about, but with another whom the Republicans really like. What do you think?
Well,
Phil?
I think Dick is half right. She is a Democrat. She's had a fine, stellar record, as you point out. I think the backstory is correct. I think that Eric Holder and his replacement as U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch is very controversial. This is a great step to kind of ease the controversy. And as you point out, you've got some Republicans who do like Sally Yates and who has been a good prosecutor, but they think that because Loretta Lynch is so radical and so tied with Eric
Come
Holder.
on, I don't sure
Oh,
know that.
look at the writings.
Unfair.
I know you love her, but look at the writings. Very race-based, just like Eric Holder.
I haven't seen that.
Oh,
She has
it'll
a
come out, it'll
reputation
come
as
out.
a good, tough prosecutor in Brooklyn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll
right.
come
I
out.
don't.
Exactly right. Yeah, no, it's just, she's going
It
to
probably
do
will come
well.
out
Yeah.
because
She's going to do
And
well.
I'm-
And then you're
close-
going to have women in the number 1 and number 2 spots there, which is also
One more
good.
business story to
that's
look at. We'll just
exciting.
do it very quickly before we jump out. Interesting reporting by the Business Chronicle about the search to get the Mercedes-Benz U.S. headquarters into Georgia. It's quiet. The only noise of it is coming from New Jersey, where they say that the state of Georgia is making huge business incentives for Mercedes-Benz. But my sources...
They say the competition is between Sandy Springs
That's
and
right.
Atlanta.
Right.
No, Sandy Springs and Dunwoody.
The city of
That's-
Dunwoody?
The city of Dunwoody
Okay.
and the city of Sandy Springs. Now, those two sites could be, I don't really know the sites, but
Right on
they
the
could be
border.
100 yards apart. All right, we got to get out. I'd like to have Mercedes-Benz to add to Porsche and some other
Right, that'd be
companies.
great.
All right, when we return, we're going to look back at the year 2014. And Phil reminded me that I left out one of the biggest stories, the ice storm. So we'll get to it. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
Thanks to Phil, I've amended my thinking on what we prepared to discuss in this block about the year 2014. I think the two ice storms were the biggest stories of the year. Now, they didn't impact the election, as some had suggested, but they sure impacted me.
A lot of people,
I
right?
tell you that 9.5 hours to go 3.9 miles is 9.5 hours of my life I won't forget. And the political establishment bungled the first one, but then began to get their act together. And Charlie English, the emergency management guy, went on TV. I was watching it, and he said, well, there's no problem here. Move along.
Yeah.
See here.
He finally was demoted.
Thought the governor was going to grab him by the...
He was demoted 11 months later.
Right.
But yeah, I call it the Polar Vortex 1 and Polar Vortex 2. And what's interesting is the state and local and governments learned a lot from that. The second ice storm was handled, as we remember, a lot better. And let's hope that we're ready in 2015 if there's another one.
But I really think the biggest story of the year, the most momentous in terms of impact, the one that we have spent the most time discussing and will continue to discuss, was the super secret that the Braves kept in announcing that they would be moving to Cobb County in 2017. That was just one of those bolts, we've said it before here, you didn't see that one coming.
Didn't see it coming.
Kasim Reed.
Kasim
didn't see
Reed,
that
Mayor
one
Reed didn't see it coming either.
No, we didn't.
And since then, we have seen the release of the so-called heat map, which shows where their customers come from, their ticket buyers. We have seen this ongoing issue of Tim Lee, the Cobb County Commission chairman, and whether he was open and transparent, and how he handled it. and
That's
whether
not
he
a
was,
question. He was not open. And he was not transparent.
And he was wrong, apparently, to have hired an outside attorney
And
to
admitted
go
as
around the
much.
county attorney.
He apologized.
But that's not going away. That's
No.
that's
It's
still
ongoing.
there.
And I think they're still making up the funding as we go
As
on.
they-
Alexis,
right.
you and I talked about the parking problem,
That's
Jeff.
right.
Remember? They're making it
They're
up
going to have
as
a
they
lot
go
of
along.
problems, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, they're going to realize
gonna-
that this, long term, that this might not be the best move
But they're
for them.
going to have more access points to that stadium at I-75 and I-285 than they have today at Turner Field. Many more access points. And if some transit arrangements can be made, I think that thing will be a vast improvement over trying to get to the first pitch at Turner Field.
Well,
You're always the optimist.
Yeah, you are. And the 15 additional access points, though, all come from one access point.
In
You have to
a
get to.
sense.
Yeah, they do.
In the meantime, in downtown Atlanta, the Falcon Stadium is coming up out of the ground.
It is.
Yeah.
Huge, monstrous construction project.
Lots of cranes.
A few cost overruns, and the Braves have had some cost overruns. But it looks like Arthur Blank is going to have his shiny new toy to rival Jerry Jones's palace out in Dallas or in Arlington.
If we could just get the team to win.
Well, that's
They
and
won this one last chance. Huh?
and the we'll just go ahead and plug it here. The game today between Atlanta and Carolina, which is a do or die game, loser goes home. That game was moved by Fox to 4 o'clock. It's not in the 1 o'clock time slot. It's in the late afternoon slot today. We had some elections this year. Did we ever? We had the most costly Senate race in Georgia history. We had probably the most costly governor's race too.
Right.
I'm not sure about that. And we listened for a year to predictions that the Republicans were in trouble because they were running out of white folks, and we got to have this demographic change of.
That was Jim Galloway and Jay Bookman over at the AJC. Boy, were they wrong.
No, they weren't wrong.
They were wrong.
Democrats ran out of black folks because they ran away from Obama. That's what happened.
They didn't get the turnout that they.
Or could it be they helped push up the white vote for the Republicans because of the race-baiting Ferguson flyer that they did?
Absolutely not.
By the way, Phil, I'm glad you brought that up. I believe, looking back now, to the months running up to the election, that Ferguson, Missouri played a huge part in the national elections. I think it had a backlash effect. I think white voters said, we're not going there. And they went and voted Republican all over the country. I can't document that, but I just have a feeling that that's what it was.
Not going where? I don't understand what you're saying.
We're not going to go protest over a criminal being shot, a guy who robbed a store. He never put his hands up in the air and said, I surrender.
Well,
the flyer
the
the flyer that was distributed by the Democratic Party in Georgia said if you vote Republican, you're sympathizing with police killing blacks. That was a lie, and a lot of good Democrats condemned it, including a lot of black clergymen, which
But
I
you
have
know
to
what?
appreciate.
Michelle Nunn and Jason Carter, thinking back about that, never really condemned that
No, they
flyer.
didn't.
That came out of the state party.
They didn't.
They never said a word. And you would think that the likes of Michelle Nunn and Jason Carter would be horrified by that flyer. Wouldn't you think?
I think there was a backlash.
Well, politics is always heavy.
I don't think that they did the work that they needed to do to energize their base, and for that reason, they lost.
All right, well, another little footnote here we got to jump out. The last white Democratic congressman from the Deep South was defeated in November, and that was John Barrow, whose district has run all over the state from Augusta.
From Augusta, in fact,
every 2 years to
the
keep up with the redistricting.
The big winner was Augusta businessman Rick Allen, and he's going to be on the Agriculture Committee, which will help Georgia.
Yeah, all right, and last thought, we got to get out. I'll just mention it here as we go to the break. Burl Ellis, the DeKalb CEO, his trial on contract practices ended in a mistrial, and he's going to be retried again in the coming year. All right, when we come back, winners and losers for the year.
Time now for this week's winners and losers.
I don't want to give you bad information. The Falcons game against the Carolina Panthers is at 4 o'clock on CBS today. Fox and CBS switching the games around. And it's an late afternoon game, not the 1 o'clock game. All right, we'll go first to you, Jeffrey, because you won't talk long with that cold you've got.
I sure won't. In fact, I don't have anything for the year, but I do have Jack and Jill of America, the Metro chapters here, got together over the holiday. Teenagers did, and raised 5,000 pairs of shoes for the Soul Project. The Soul Project helps kids in Africa who are currently walking to school barefoot. And it's just a terrific effort on their part, and would like to see, obviously, that kind of contribution from everybody everywhere.
All right, Phil, what you have?
Well, I know we could all do a long list of the charities and the houses of worship that did so much over the Christmas holidays. I will make, obviously, we talked about it, the winners politically were the Republicans, losers, Democrats. America Seem Reed, my winner and loser, he's done a lot for the city, as we pointed out last year. I really am upset, though, at the weak police response when he allows protesters to swarm the interstate or lay down in a Buckhead street. I want to pay tribute, though, to those we lost in 2014, some great Georgians. We know we lost Governor Carl Sanders, Herman Russell, the great entrepreneur and philanthropist. Remember Pete Van Wieren? We lost him, Dick. the great Christian businessman Truett Cathy, and the prominent attorney Guy Davis, who ran for governor.
That's right. And Alexis, what do you have?
Okay, I'll add to that list of tributes. This week we just lost James Dean, who was a former state legislator and a longtime community activist and supporter. And then again, Mayor Kasim Reed, the Mayor's Mass Ball this week raised $1.2 million for colleges here in Atlanta and nationally. And also Miranda McKenzie, congratulations to her. She retired from the UNCF as Southeast Regional Director, and Justine Norman Board, congratulations to her, took over as Southeast Regional Director.
All right, I'll make as my winner the teams that elected David Perdue and re-elected Governor Nathan Deal. Just a trivial footnote there, 3 top leaders of Deal's re-election campaign jumped on an airplane and flew to London to watch the Falcons 10 days before the election. I guess they kind of knew how that thing was going to turn out, huh? And I will make my loser DeKalb County the place of total dysfunction and division. But the good news there is my winners are new cities, because as the counties are proving unable to deliver reasonable services, the new cities are doing the 3 Ps, police, parks, and paving. And we'll see you next year on the Georgia Gang.
Wow.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing on today's program.